Are you looking for an inspiring listen? Something to motivate you? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Women of the Northwest, where we have conversations with ordinary women leading extraordinary lives. Motivating, inspiring, compelling.
That was your role where maybe your husband was more the strategist, the one who did the investing. And what's happened over generations is women, especially like millennials, they're actually one of the most educated generations in history. They're really going, no, I want to be involved in the investing as well. And women are very different when it comes to investing. We actually outperform our male counterparts when we invest, but it's getting us to invest.
Hey, listeners. How are your finances? Are they intimidating? Are you comfortable with debt ratio? Or are you stuck? Sometimes we as women are not confident in our money sense, not sure how to invest, haven't looked at our financial future, don't have a vision for what we want, and don't even know how to go about it. Well, today my guest, Jamie Hendricks, will enlighten us on all those topics. So let's just listen in and see what she has to say. Welcome, everybody, to Women of the Northwest. My guest today is Jamie Hendricks. Hi, Jamie.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
We're going to talk about money.
Yes, we are.
We're going to talk about women and money.
It's like my favorite subject.
Well, let's see. So what do you know? I'm going to let you just start. I'll just open it up.
Now, first, I just want to thank you for having me on here because I've listened to your podcast and I'm kind of honored that you asked me to do this. I was like, wow, maybe I'm moving up in the community.
You are an extraordinary woman.
Thank you. So are you. Yeah, I just love talking about money, especially with women, because I think we've been left out of the conversation for generations, quite frankly. And the thing I appreciate about some of the younger generations coming up is that they're more comfortable talking about money. But I'm also finding even talking with friends of mine that are, baby boomers, they still do have some blocks when it comes to money conversations. And my goal is to have women really be comfortable when the word money comes up instead of sort of retracting and saying, yeah, that's kind of scary to me. I read a statistic one time that said that women would rather talk about the death of a loved one over money, which was crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was really weird.
Do you think with younger couples that there's more of an even taking over of money situations where, say, my generation and whatever was generally the man did all the money stuff, unless you became a widow like I did at 32, then it's like, okay, I think I need to know this.
Yeah, that's funny. That's been a conversation the last couple of weeks. It seems to come up a lot, but absolutely. And what's happened is I think women used to be kind of in that role of paying the bills, make sure that the checkbook is balanced, make sure that you don't spend more than you save. That was your role where maybe your husband was more the strategist, the one who did the investing. And what's happened over generations is women, especially like millennials, they're actually one of the most educated generations in history. They're really going, no, I want to be involved in the investing as well. And women are very different when it comes to investing. We actually outperform our male counterparts when we invest, but it's getting us to invest. And so one of the reasons for that is because we like a plan. We don't make decisions on a whim. We're not going to go buy a stock just because someone told us on the slide that, this is a stock.
Well, I good.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we're good.
So I think that with information out there that it's just easier to get at. We have the internet now. Sometimes that can be good. Sometimes it can be bad. But I think if you sit down, I've been an investment advisor for 23 years. And when you come in, sit down and create a plan, then women's like their superpower comes out because they're ready to go.
Like my husband subscribes to the Kipling magazine and every once in a while kind of flips through it and it's like, it's a little too much for me. Yeah. I mean, it's vocabulary. It's things that I don't understand. And I just like, give me a little basic what's going on.
How to do it.
Yeah. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
and what's that mean for my taxes and what,
Yeah. Like you want to know the nits and grits of it.
Yeah.
You don't want to know all the corporate jargon of it.
And I don't want to wait till the end to find out, like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that I actually had a client of mine who's in her 60s. I had sat down and had just a cool conversation with her around money because she's in a generation where she was the bill payer and never did any of the investing. So it's good to get insight from that. I'm kind of in between. I'm like they call us the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Not for money, but because of we have older parents and kids. So we're kind of in the between. But I think with money we are too, only because we're starting to go, oh yeah, wait a minute. Maybe women need to be part of that conversation because I know I've almost been a quarter century into working with money. When I walk into a room where there's men, they're freely talking about money, their investments, their whatever that is, that women shut down. And I think that's just simply generational. I mean, we couldn't even open a checking account legally till the year after I was born. And I'm not that old. I mean, so
yeah,
we just generationally, we haven't had those conversations. And so it's really cool to see women, especially older generation of women, opening up and going, wait a minute, like I want to know how to invest in the financial markets, or I want to go buy a second home. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah. And I think part of it is just maybe the women not talking about it is more because they're not sure of themselves, sure enough of themselves to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Other than to say, do you think it's okay to do this? Or this is what I'm doing. Kind of seems like it's working okay, but
Yeah. And
the confidence.
Part of that is just the daily learning how you manage your money differently. So what I referred to before about women paying the bills and balancing a checkbook, that really puts us in the role of bookkeeper. And I have my company, Fiscal Fitness Club. And what I teach women is you are the CEO of your money. So you have to think differently about that. You're not just balancing a checkbook or filling in every cell in a spreadsheet. You're making a plan, and then you're going to make your money move and have a job. And that's what you're focused on. And then you're going to manage a very small part of that, which really comes down to our gas and our food and our dining out. The rest of it needs to have a job. And then our involvement in that is like, okay, what do I want to invest in? What kind of things interest me? Do I care if it's oil, or do I care that it's going to affect the environment? Or do I care that company has a board that's diverse? Like there's so much stuff out there now that's fun to invest
that maybe you wouldn't even think about all those details to begin with.
Yeah. So I think really the goal is to make it really fun for women because we're storytellers and we like to commune. And man, when you get a room full of women talking about money, it is so fun. Like, this is fun.
I'm in my element.
I know. So, yeah.
So what are some practical things? Give me practical things. Well, where would you start out with?
Yeah,
I know. I got a bank account, checking and savings with maybe $5 in my savings, and I have everything else,
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? You're going to be surprised by the answer. It's your mindset. The first thing you have to go through is, why am I making these decisions? Because we can balance our checkbooks, but really, why aren't we putting the money into the investment, right? So I find women have, a checking account with $80,000 sitting in there for no other reason than she hasn't done anything. So 2024, and we have good interest rates, but this is when we had almost negative interest rates and they were still doing it. And we were having we had a really good financial market. But I think the first thing to do is to sit down. I tell this to every single person. I don't care if they don't want to do it. They are always surprised, as write your money story. And I usually have them start with 4 questions. One is, what did your environment feel like growing up when money came up? How did your guardian, parents, whoever raised you, handle their money? And then how did you make your first dollar and how did you spend it? And those 4 can really, for me, I grew up in a home with a lot of scarcity. My dad, unfortunately, was a gambler. So my life with money was almost like a very volatile crypto, stock market type of situation. So there would be these like really big highs of, oh, dad won money or dad got paid. And then as 2 weeks came down, especially for paycheck, you got paid every 2 weeks, then it was like depression. And so we lived off of government assistance. So when I went out in the world, my way, my mind mindset went to, I don't want people to think I'm poor.
Oh,
So I would start buying things, and I ended up creating a lifestyle I could not afford, and it just crumbled on me.
yeah.
And that came from a lot of insecurities, but I didn't understand why I kept I would get out of debt and put myself back into get out. So it doesn't start with just the budgeting, because I see it happen all the time. People get their stuff in order, and in 6 months, they're right back to using their credit cards or buying that car loan that's, you see these big, I hate to say it, you see the big trucks driving around, and there's people in them, you're like, not sure you really can afford them. And what I try to do is switch that mantra to like, well, what if we cut that payment in half and we invest it half? And then in 5 years, you could go pay cash for that car.
Right.
And that feel good.
Right.
So it's strategizing differently like a CEO instead of we're just bookkeeping. And that takes some mindset switching for sure.
Well, and that's even thinking about that. How many people even would know how to think like a CEO?
CEO, yeah.
That's,
it's total training.
I mean, what does that mean? What does that look like? That's somebody I saw on TV that was, or what? I mean, it's like,
it's so
I'm just a regular gal. What do I do here?
Yeah.
Where do I start?
Yeah. And that's why I say the mindset training, because once you figure out where you're at with your money, then you start making a plan. So then it's not about your budget worksheet. It's like, okay, I make $5,000 a month and I have $3,000 or $2,500 of that. It shouldn't be more than $2,500. You shouldn't spend more than 50% in essentials. But I have $2,500 going to essentials. Now I have this, like what we used to call the discretionary income. What do I do with that? And I try to put people in the place of how will you make money upon your money versus, oh, I'm going to go get a car loan and pay $600-700 a month, right?
And I don't know if it's an interest or
it's ridiculous. Like it's so high. And I know if anybody's listening to this that sells loans, they're not going to like me, but I don't disagree with loans if you can get a return on your investment. Homes to me are an investment. Still, you got to be careful. How much money are you putting in there? But if someone comes to me and they're in debt and they're like, I need to make more money to solve the problem, I'll right away say, no, you don't need to make more money. You need to fix the problem you're in. There's something going on in your mind that's creating you to think it's okay to function at this level. I did the same thing.
Right.
So you have,
which is good. That's one of those things that a learning thing that now you can use for the benefit of others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And what's really cool about it is when you see relief come over them, because I think so often we keep failing and failing and failing. And we're like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And it really does. You have to think differently about your money. And, in fact, there's this thing coming. Have you heard of the Great Wealth Transfer?
No.
You're going to be part of it. So, the Great Wealth Transfer is happening over the next couple of decades, and baby boomers are, turning 80 now. And they're predicting about $70.2 trillion will transfer down mostly to millennials. And the reason is baby boomers are going, hey, kids, so my generation, the sandwich generation, you guys are fine. You're doing great. We're going to give it to the grandchildren.
Oh.
So there's supposed to be about $70.2 trillion moving down, 50.8 million. So about 65% supposed to go in the hands of women. So not only are we going to have a lot of money in our hands to manage, in fact,
at a younger age,
right. But by 2030, we're going to surpass and women will have the most individual wealth in the country. So it is really important that we have resources for women so they can learn how to do it different and do it, quite frankly, like their male counterpart, I mean, baby boomers have built an extraordinarily amount of wealth. I don't think people understand that. It's one of the biggest wealth building generations in history. So someone's been doing something right. But now we've got to pass that down and women make the world better because we care about what we invest in.
So we're thinking that they did it better because men were mostly doing it, or because what happened?
Yeah.
I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah, I think what happened is I think women were just put in that bookkeeping role. And so when you think about the baby boomers, the baby generation, the baby boomers, really in that generation, men were taking care of the investing part of it, where women were doing more of like, I'm paying the bills and balancing the checkbook. That's starting to shift. for a lot of reasons, because, you're becoming a widow or you go through a divorce, or so women are having to, do that. But quite frankly, the baby boomers have probably done well because there was just investing involved in general, which was mainly done, by our male counterparts. And I'm speaking very general about it.
Right.
What
Right.
all
It's
the
just a curious,
generations-
it's
yeah.
just a curious,
Yeah.
what have you seen and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see the shift.
Mhm.
I think women are really coming into their power. For me and my husband, we come into our money very equal. So it can be done for anybody listening. You don't have to have one overpowering the other. We keep our money separate as far as like our everyday stuff. And then we have a joint account that we do our traveling and put money to the house. And it gives you autonomy, because that's important.
Yeah. What's my current marriage?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've always kept everything separate, and I'm glad we have.
Yeah.
Because when I came into it, I had Social Security for the kids, things. He had farm things he's paying for and big things. And did you have to ask every time you were doing something? And how is he keeping it compared to how I'm the one to keep the whole thing, like, whatever. So it's worked very well for us. But
it's so important. 70% of couples that sit down and talk about money only once a month, well, their marriage is 90% chances of lasting longer. That's how impactful that money is to a marriage.
Yeah.
Like you see it all the time. And even if you're going to move in with somebody, my husband and I, before we were married, we moved in together and we signed cohabitation agreements. And he bought the house. I didn't want to own a big asset with anybody if I wasn't married to him on a contract. So when I moved in, I said, do you want me as an owner or a renter? Because I'm not doing the owner with that, I'm not giving you money beyond renting.
Right.
If that's what you want. And it was an easy conversation for us, but I always recommend that to any couples out there moving in. Housing is so expensive right now.
No kidding.
It's so expensive. So what's happening, we're seeing a shift of couples moving in too quickly because they want to save money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now
now how do we manage that?
Of that is now we're in this situation that we really didn't want to be in. How do we manage that? And the way you manage it is you take the time and you do a cohabitation agreement. So what happens if it doesn't work out? Who gets what? Who pays for what? What if the discrepancy in income, right? What if someone's making 100 plus and the other one's making 40 or 50? How do we manage the expenses of the house?
Yeah.
So you have to have those conversations. If you truly love and care about the person you're with, it absolutely has to be the number one priority in your relationship. And people hate to hear that, but money supports every single thing we do.
Yeah.
It's just like a relationship. If you go to your husband and you're like, it's too boring, I don't want to spend time with him, and I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like if you do that to money, what do you think's going to happen? Right. I mean, it's energy.
Yeah.
That's why all that stuff matters.
Yeah.
And when I started getting my money in the right place and getting excited about being able to manage it and to get out of it, I mean, I ended up living in my dream space, which is here where we're at in our community. I finally got out of debt. I've been out of debt for 8 years now, 100%. My decision making's differently, and I've built wealth.
Yeah.
And you do that by kind of becoming friends with your money and treating it with respect.
Well, let's talk a little bit about getting out of debt. For me, and this is what I advise my kids, is you figure out one thing that you can pay off, and then you take that same amount of money and put it on your other thing, so that you gradually are paying off things and you don't buy anything else.
Yeah.
Unless it's like, I really need to have it, but how much can I afford to get that?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, I love talking about debt because I got out of it. So here's the thing about debt. There's never one answer for every person. And so for me, it's all about balance. Here's how I relate it to it. If you decide that you're 50 pounds overweight and you want to lose 50 pounds, well, if you go and start not eating, so you eat 1,200 calories a day, we know most of us that's not sustainable. Eventually, you're going to get hungry and you're probably going to go to the cupboard and grab the chips out and the cookies, and you're going to start shoving food down your mouth because your body's starving. And it's the same thing with debt. You can't put yourself on such a restrictive budget that you fail to keep going on it. So really what I look at is the map, is the plan, and what is feasible for you to still have some money to like enjoy life. And maybe that doesn't mean you're paying off the highest interest rate credit card, because maybe that payment just it just wouldn't work, So you really have to balance the way that you're paying off your debt and not overdo it. Because anytime we start something new, we're like so excited about it and we're going to do it.
Right. But is it sustainable?
Yeah. So it's, most times you want to pay off your highest interest rate debt first, but don't just go in and start putting every discretionary penny that you earn on it because it's just not sustainable. And then here's what happens. Let's say you do pay all the debt off and you've sustained through that. Now you're so exhausted. You're like, woo, all my debt's paid off. This is what I did. I'm going to go on a trip. Right. Guess what I had to do? I had to put it on a credit card, right? So you want to learn sustainability through learning about money. You want to learn how to manage your money that like you can still have.
And how to save,
Yeah, and how to save. Like,
don't just be bumping along from paycheck to paycheck because you will have no rainy day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I had a client recently. She was such an awesome client because she really needed the help, but she also she did what I asked her to do. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And her thing was she was looking at her transactions all the time. She would get up from dinner. She would count. She even one time came out of the movie theater because she knew she was just like obsessed with her money. So here again, relationship. So I had to get her to back away from her money and leave it alone and get a system in place that she could trust. So some of the things I do is like set up a health bucket for her. Even though she had health insurance, she had some things going on that she would be maxing out her deductible every year. That really stressed her out.
Right.
Well, we'll set up a bucket for that.
Yeah.
We'll fund your HSA and then we're going to set the additional money up in a bucket. Well, when it came time for her to pay her health bill, she started grasping at her savings. And I'm like, no. You're still putting money in that savings. We're not switching the plan here.
Yeah.
And within about 6 months, her whole demeanor changed. And when a health bill came in, oh yeah, I just take it out of that bucket. I don't need to like immediately grab. And then she's watching this account build up and she's excited now to see.
Yeah.
You have to get excited about it.
Yeah.
So debt is that interesting. We added $4 trillion worth of debt to our economy last year. And, it makes the economy go, but it also puts us in a lot of stress and anxiety.
Right. Yeah. Huh. How does it work to work with a financial advisor?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple different ways. So like I said, I've been investment advising for 23 years. And what I found, there was a huge gap between when we start working, fully as adults. I know some of us work before then, but as we turn 18 to retirement, the financial industry really focuses on our retirement. That's all they focus on. And so what I suggest to people who want to come in and really manage their money well is start out with the basics. So start by, knowing your money story, creating the plan, getting your vision clear. What is it you're trying to do with your money? Implement it and then track it. So there's like this 5-step process.
Okay.
So that I always tell everybody, if you don't have that in place, you're not going to become a wealth builder because you're going to just be all over the board. Then from there, what I suggest, and this gets more into the financial planning, is a comprehensive plan. And so that's where you come in and you pull everything together and you say at the end of it, like, okay, I need this amount of money to retire. And that's what they call a comprehensive financial plan. And that's where, myself as an investment advisor would then actually recommend investments for that person. And then we have a plan. And people ask me all the time, well, how much money should I be putting away? And depends on your lifestyle. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
So $100,000 today would cost you $3.2 million if you retired at 67. And people kind of gasp. And it's like, well, it depends. So Social Security, we don't realize that monthly payment we're getting equates to a big bucket of money. So if you're getting max benefits, which is around, and max benefits at 67, by the way, because that's when most people decide to retire, then you're looking around $3,500 a month. Well, that's a $1.8 million bucket, right?
Yeah.
So we only need to make up for that, which doesn't seem like only, 1 point some million dollars seems like a lot, but it's not that hard if you have everything in order, especially when you're young. Like As you
Yeah.
get older, it definitely
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah. Yeah. But they don't
So,
always think about that.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
here's what I recommend for anybody listening that maybe they don't have money to invest right now, but I would try to get into some kind of program that would help you put your money together and figure out where you're at. And then from there, I highly recommend sitting down with somebody, that sit down with somebody who knows what they're talking about. If it's somebody who's I'm going to say this really clear because this is like on the internet all the time. Do not hire your dentist or your accountant or your attorney to give you investment advice, or your best friend or your neighbor mowing the lawn. Like,
Yeah.
hire an investment advisor. And who is an investment advisor? You can get on to brokercheck.com
Okay.
to see if they have a Series 7 and a 66. Now, the older generation had 63 and 65, so that's good too. Make sure they are a fiduciary. If all of that holds true, that's somebody, as long as you get along with them, you should go in and you interview, because this is not a one transaction deal. I've had clients for 20 years. So you want to make sure that you get along with that person and they're listening to you.
Yeah.
That's the big thing for women. That's the biggest complaint I've heard from women is I get in there and they don't hear what I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
And if they're not stand up and go, you're not hearing what my goals are. And I don't feel like you're really understanding what I want.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So,
Well, because to learn how to get a relationship with your money, you need to trust the person that's helping you do that.
yeah, absolutely. And when women come in, we're a little nervous. We walk in, we haven't had a lot of experience in some ways. And so we might sit down and say, well, I just want my money to be safe. And then that advisor goes, okay, we'll just put you into a CD or a bond. Well, that's not advice.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's find out why you feel like you need to be safe, or what's making you afraid. Because I'm sitting there in front of a 35-year-old and they're telling me this.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Something's blocking you, because believe it or not, the financial market, 77% of the time over history has been up. You've made money on the market. It's 400 years old. And our first bubble, like when we think about the bubble, was like 1701.
Really?
So it's not the first time we've had the bubble. And I will say one last thing about that, and I get really passionate about this. When we're in an election year, people are very connected to their political party right now. I have felt it. I'm 51 years old and I felt it more than ever. The president does not dictate the market. Like, that is so shocking to people.
Yeah.
First of all, they're not there long enough. They can make different policies and regulations, but companies want to make money. They're going to adjust.
Yeah.
So I just really caution people, because I know we're so tightly held, whatever party you're on, whatever affiliation you believe in, just know really one of the most powerful entities in the United States is the Federal Reserve Board, right? Because they dictate the interest rates, or they have autonomy over that. Nobody's supposed to be telling them what to do.
Yeah.
So that's something to really think about when you start investing, is don't let fear drive your decision. Sit down and plan and figure it out what you want to do. And then the best we can do as advisors is look back historically. Well, believe it or not, we have a lot of history and we've been through stuff like this before. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. What are a couple of things that you think are wise investments?
I would rephrase it as, because saying something's a wise investment doesn't mean it's a wise investment for everybody.
Okay.
And so, and I get that question a lot, like, what should I be investing in? Well, let's look at your lifestyle. What is it? But what I will say is that sitting down and figuring out like how comfortable you are with the market going up and down can really dictate where you're going to invest. So if you are 35 years old, probably a growth portfolio is going to work in your favor. When you look at a lot of people view the S&P 5. So I'll talk more in indexes than particular products. So like the S&P 500 index, and that's just an index. It's not a fund. We have index funds that follow it, but that's 500 of the top companies in the United States. A lot of people like to talk about the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones isn't the index to follow because it's kind of convoluted. You could have Microsoft doing well, and it could be 80% of that number.
Oh, yeah.
And so the S&P 500 is like 500 different companies. And that rate of return since we've had an S&P 500 has been 8.3%. So if you have longevity, if you're making 8 to 10%, that's a reasonable rate of return.
Yeah.
You'll double your money about every 9 years if you do that.
Yeah.
And that's without putting money into it. You put money into it, and then it's even more. We've been in a fixed income market, the last year and a half, 2 years. So you're getting 5% savings accounts right now. So, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say which I have all kinds of funds that I recommend and I think are great.
Yeah.
But in general, if we're just talking in general population, it's your risk tolerance and sitting down with somebody.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any last things you want to share?
Anybody out there, especially women, I do focus on women. I'm sorry, men, you're wonderful too. In fact, probably the majority of my clients right now. But here's a piece of advice I'll give to women. And I'm going to give it to women who aren't involved in their finances right now. Because I will tell all of the ladies out there, I have husbands that come in and they're like, I can't get her to come in. She doesn't want to pay attention. And they're trying. I give them kudos, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have a husband coming to you asking you to come be involved because we live longer.
Do it.
You will be in a situation eventually where you're going to be dealing with massive grief and then trying to figure it out. So why not learn it before because hopefully if your husband dies, you're going to be sad. Or if you go through a divorce, that's massive grief. In fact, your body manages it the same, divorce and death. Your body does the same thing. So get involved with your money. And if you're not involved with it, get involved with it. You should be involved with all parts of it because we live longer.
Yeah.
So we get that responsibility.
Good advice. Good advice. How can people reach you?
So I work with Raymond James. I'm going to talk about my investment business, Raymond James, and I'm right downtown here on Pier 12. And
in Astoria.
In Astoria, yes. I'm like, I'm forgetting. In Astoria. I think a lot of people know about us, but we're down on Pier 12. And then if you're into learning more about the financial coaching side of stuff, or that basic money management, then same place. I'm still down here on Pier 12. And that's under Fiscal Fitness Club. And you can actually go to that website. So it's fiscalfitnessclub.com.
Okay.
And you can go on there and learn all kinds of stuff and contact me and everything. So
all right. I'll put that in the show notes.
Great. Thank you, Jan.
So it's a pleasure. I don't know about you, but I thought Jamie's questions were interesting to ponder, which, by the way, are listed in the show notes. Why am I making my money decisions? What did your money environment feel like growing up? How did your parents manage money? How did you make your first dollar, and what did you spend it on? I would urge you to really think about these things, and maybe if you haven't already, it's time to have a visit with a financial advisor. I'm so glad you joined us today. If you enjoyed this episode or have any comments, you can easily share it or leave a text message at the top of the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, check out my other podcast, Just Talking About Jesus. And until next time, enjoy life, spend time with those you love, appreciate what you have. Bye-bye for now.